Hello, how are you?
Doing great, doing fantastic. As I was reading over your bio, I was in awe of all the many things that you've been doing over the past 25 years. As I mentioned to you before we went on, I had no idea that you're a board certified naturopath. I knew that you were a chiropractor, that your expertise is in performance. So we are definitely going to get to that area and be talking about some tips and tools and things that people can do from a diet and lifestyle perspective. You're also a certified functional medicine practitioner. Goodness, you have a very diverse integrative health clinic in California. So kudos to you. You've done such great work.
Thank you. Thank you. It's what happens when you stay curious.
And you're not just curious, you're also so humble. It's just amazing. Like you are one of those clinicians that's in the trenches working with patients. You and I spoke earlier today. You had a very busy day. So again, I just admire all your years of service, and it's really an honor to know you. So Scott, let's kick it off by first. I want to know a little bit about how you got into performance. What's your personal story? How did you decide to become a chiropractic physician, get into naturopathic medicine? I mean, how did you piece this all together?
I was pretty active as a kid. I was pretty active in college. I had my sports, and I had several injuries, and it was a chiropractor who was really able to reduce my injuries, get me back to functioning, and returning back to the things that I loved, and it allowed me to avoid surgeries. So my passion really stemmed from there, and I've always tried to stay active. I've tried, training for certain events, and just trying to stay healthy or challenge myself at certain times. But the direction into performance kind of happened by accident, because I was treating a lot of autoimmune conditions, and we were treating thyroid issues and fibromyalgias, and just by happenstance, I did a lecture for a bunch of athletes, a running group, and there was a professional triathlete there uh, speaking as well. And after talking a little bit, and him deciding to come in as a patient, I realized that high end professional athletes create a self-induced autoimmune condition, and
Oh,
that from overreaching, overtraining, breaking down the muscle tissue faster than they're able to build it. And I really just implemented the functional medicine protocols for my autoimmune patients, for my professional athletes, and became a snowball. It, one person got well, and then another person got well, and then all of a sudden I was the performance guy. And it really just happened because of pursuing functional medicine, and understanding the matrix of the body, and getting rid of the interference, and then getting out of the way and letting the body do what it's supposed to do.
yeah, that makes so much sense, Scott. And I really like that you took a functional medicine approach. But what's curious to me about what you just said was this connection between autoimmunity and performance, high end performance athletes and such. There's a correct way and an incorrect way to go about physical activity. Just give us some global tips about physical movement and activity. What do we need to do in order to do it right so that we don't create inflammation and immune conditions in our bodies?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is to make sure that we don't read a lot of um, fitness magazines. And
Less is more, right?
yeah, because what happens is, these wonderful, wonderful interviews with professional athletes, and this is what this athlete does for their workout, and that athlete and what they do for their workout, and we're not them. And when I've dealt with some of the pro athletes and some of the actual world champion Ironmen, from world champion first place winners at Kona, um, their routine is wake up, go for a swim, come back, eat something, take a nap, wake up, go go
Sounds
out.
like a mind.
Yeah, they come home and then they get their massage, and then someone's making them a meal, and then they do some biofeedback or a yoga class or meditation, and then they wake up and they do it again. And not to take away from that, but that is a profession unto itself,
Yeah.
and no one gets to do that other than them. So we can't do their workouts, and we have to understand that. So we have to tone it down a little bit, and then the next thing is what I like to call, or what's referred to as periodization in
Mm.
training, where you have a load of exercise for the week, and load is determined by frequency of exercise, duration of exercise, or intensity. So frequency, duration, or intensity. And then the next week it's about 10-15% more, and then the next week it's about 10-15% more, and then the fourth week is somewhere between the second and the third week. So we have what we call a quote unquote recovery week, and it gives the body the opportunity to understand that we're still not running away from tigers, that we need to have some sort of parasympathetic um, lapse of time so that the body can rest and repair and regenerate. And so, as long as someone can tweak that frequency, intensity, or duration and then make it variable, I think that's better off than getting into the gym, doing the same thing every single time you're there, or for the people who only get to exercise a couple times a week, but then they do too much, and then they do absolutely nothing in between. It sometimes it's more about mapping it out, and that helps the body recover. And really, that's what it's all about, right? Exercise breaks the body down. If we keep breaking it down, we never have the opportunity to repair. So it's really about only exercising enough so that you can rest and recover.
Yeah, I liken it to, there's so much talk about intermittent fasting, and I call the resting part intermittent resting. It's almost like we don't have enough of those dips where we just let ourselves relax, we rest and digest, and then we move again, right? And so I like what you're saying. It's so important for recovery. So the final pose of yoga, shavasana, where you're just laying down, corpse pose, that's equally important. And that's when everybody wants to book out of the class, like they're done. And that's not what our bodies need. We really need that sympathetic and parasympathetic. So, Scott, where does nutrition come into this? When we talk about recovery, I mean, you're also a naturopathic physician. How do you weave in food, whether a ketogenic type of diet, intermittent fasting? You just went to the Global Fasting Summit. I'd love for you to share with us some tidbits from what you recommend as it relates to performance and food.
Yeah. So unfortunately, and I don't mean this to be snarky, the answer is it depends, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm
it,
glad you said that actually.
it depends on what the goals are. So if we could break it down into four different columns, and I even break down the ketogenic diet into four different columns. There's ketogenic diet lifestyle. There's ketogenic diet weight management. There's ketogenic diet clinical, and then there's ketogenic diet performance. And all four of those are a little different. And so it needs to be tweaked per though that column, whatever the person's goals are. Um, so
Can you go through them a little bit just so we understand them? So the lifestyle, the weight management, clinical, and performance, right?
Yeah, so I liken the keto lifestyle essentially almost like the paleo lifestyle, right? It's the keto lifestyle is more to me, and and I don't think this is recognized by anybody. It's just something I kind of made up. But in my mind, there's the lifestyle, which is more of a LCHF, a low carb, high fat,
Okay.
periods of strict ketosis and or fasting so that we are producing the ketones, we are giving our body a rest. Then there's weight management, and the weight management to me is very strict keto adaptation as fast as possible, staying in ketosis for the period of time that we want to create the results that we want. You know, is it a 20-pound difference? Is it a 50-pound difference?
Hmm.
And then we can cycle in. I always cycle in intermittent fasting and or some prolonged fasting with the keto diet. And then clinical becomes, a little more serious, but prolonged, right? Because we're really trying to move markers and move gene expression. And then performance is you, depending on the sport, right? So then that branches off. So when we're looking at if it's an endurance sport, there's a ton of information, a ton of research from Volek and Finney about endurance sports and being able to maintain a ketogenic diet and maintain performance. But when we get a little bit more into the high intensity exercises, the strength and speed exercises, I look a little bit more at the cyclic keto diet where we try to stay strict keto for a good week or so, and then bring in a reset day. I don't like using the word carbo load because that's been used almost negatively, but it will bring in anywhere depending on who the person is, what they are training for, and what level of performance they are. Like you and I, we're the weekend warriors. But if there's someone who I call an age grouper, where they are placing in their age group for performance. They're going out and they're doing their half marathons or 10K runs, and they're in the top 10. Those are my age groupers. And then there's the elites, and then there's the professionals. So depending on how lean they are, what their muscle mass is, I can recommend a reset meal of anything from 600 calories all the way to maybe 1500 extra calories of carbs
Mm.
to restore glycogen load so that the next few days they can do their heavy, hard intensity days. And then as we deplete that glycogen, they could get back into ketosis and use ketones for their LSD runs, their long, steady distance rides. So when it's hard muscle building, functional fitness type things, we try to increase the carbs a little bit. When it's their endurance days, anything over an hour and a half, we might still keep them in a keto state.
Scott, how do you actually practically do that? Do you have a program, some kind of software that cranks out these different dietary plans, or do you sit down with your patients and say, here's what I want you to eat, so many of these foods in these categories, or how do you do that practically? How do most of your patients really understand all of the analytics behind the grams, the calories, and making sure that they have the right proportions?
Totally make it up as I go. No, I'm kidding. Um, I don't have a program. I do encourage patients to pick up an app, like one of those keto apps. I don't have one that I like more than another, as long as they can track it. And,
Okay.
I do have them track it, and I'll have them email that to me a day or so before the our consult, so I could just see how they're doing, and we can make some tweaks there. I use a BIA from RJL, and we're able to look at least their basal metabolic rate, and we're able to measure their calorie needs based on the amount of exercise. and then come up with a macronutrient balance, which if it's keto, we try to stay that 70-20-10, or even if it's long endurance and we don't need to keep the proteins up even that high, we can go a little higher on the fats and even a little lower on the proteins. So we stick with a macronutrient a blend, and then we just talk about what they like to eat. What I found was I put a lot of time and energy into creating uh, like a protocol. This is what you eat on Monday. This is what you eat on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Like, didn't find that they were able to keep to that, because they were saying, well, I can, if I'm at home, I can make this, but if I'm on the road working, where am I going to find that particular food? And then if they didn't have access to that exact thing, then they felt like they failed.
Right. Oh, that's a
And
good point. Mm-hmm.
the moment they fail one day, they usually throw their hands up and say, oh, the heck with it.
Yeah.
I just won't follow it while I'm on the road for the next 4 days. And then, they get off. So what I like to do is I like to ask them, what do you eat? What would you like?
Mm-hmm.
And then we move into, well, can I see you eating eggs in the morning without the toast? And
Right.
can I see you not have the hash browns? Can we move into something else? And we just create agreements. Now it takes a little longer, but they're the ones creating their meal plan. and
Okay.
and the adage, give a man a fish, they eat for a day, but teach them to fish. So I really need them to learn how to come to their own conclusions and make good choices if they're at a restaurant, or if they're on the road, or if they're at someone's home, or however, how do you navigate your way through life, rather than it's got to be this.
Scott, what do you think that most people struggle with the most? Is it truly getting off of sugar? Is it the alcohol?
Yeah, alcohol is a thing, right? And when it hits the system, it's calories, and it's certainly not a protein calorie, and it's not a fat calorie. So it still stores or burns kind of like a sugar. uh,
Mm-hmm.
so during the holidays, that's a tough one. um, I like to give them the workaround, because I definitely do incorporate intermittent fasting and 24-hour fasts. So as the holidays approach and they say, "What am I going to do?" I tell them, "You're going to celebrate Thanksgiving, and you're going to have fun, and you're going to have a smile on your face, and you're not going to care. You're just going to enjoy your family and friends. And the next day, you're going to fast for 24 hours." So
Ah, great
so
idea.
they
What about even fasting before? Would that be a strategy too?
It's just as good of a strategy. Wherever there's a feast, there needs to be a famine, or wherever there's famine, you're able to have a feast. So, with Thanksgiving, I always find that things get a little stressful for people,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like going up to, and so there's always like, well, I ate a little bit of this, or I ate a little bit of that, which means you didn't fast. But when Thanksgiving is over, there's a little bit of a decompression, and they're willing to rest a little bit, that next day, and fasting becomes a little easier. I mean, this is a big tangent, but uh, a, a husband wife uh, patients came in. We had them on a ketogenic diet. They were feeling great. She was born and raised in Germany. She was going back to Germany. She goes, "What do I do? We're having a family reunion, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
do
Hmm.
keto. I'll be insulting my family. What do I do?" Easy. You enjoy your family. You enjoy your time with your family. You're already keto adapted. It's fine. They fasted for 24 hours, and the next day, where they were on their own away from their family, they said it was one of the most enjoyable days. They weren't really hungry the next day anyway. So they only really became a little hungry by the time dinner came, and they had brought some of their keto strips and the urine strips, and they said they were right back on track and they felt great. So once we go into keto adaptation, we can have that metabolic flexibility,
Yeah.
which is
You know,
really what we're looking at.
I like that so much because ketogenic a ketogenic plan can fit into a lifestyle in which we can enjoy. You know, I think that when people think of keto or intermittent fasting, there is this sense of restriction. And so I like your approach because it's very balanced. It's saying, no, there's a time to rest and digest. It's back to what you were saying with periodization. Scott, what about supplements? How do you bring dietary supplements to your patient?
Supplementation, again, it depends on our initial assessment of what they need, but we always want to keep the body moving, keep the mitochondria working hard. So I'll recommend some CoQ10. I like carnitine, but I like the acetyl L-carnitine for
Okay.
muscle. But the acetyl form tends to stimulate brain. I love alpha lipoic acid. Not only because it helps stimulate more GLUT4 vesicles for insulin sensitivity, but it also has shown to reduce inflammation at the blood brain barrier. So when people are trying to adapt and keto adapt, you're looking, I'm trying to address their physiological necessity, but also maybe some of their neurotransmitter and psychological stresses as well that can occur when they're trying to go through that adaptation. And that
Mhm.
tends to help quite a bit. I like taurine quite a bit, magnesium and taurine, um, to calm as a calming neurotransmitter as well. And it seems to keep people satisfied. So I love the mixture of um, like a 5-methyl with a taurine with a B6. That tends to help people quite a lot.
Five
One
methyl hydrofolate, right? Five methyl
Yes,
tetra. Yeah. Okay.
yes,
Just
exactly.
and then
And
taurine.
one
Okay.
of the one of the secret sauces is doing a hot drink in the morning of apple cider vinegar and
Okay.
this mixture of the 5-methyl and the taurine and the magnesium. And the apple cider vinegar has a lot of acidic acid, so
Mm-hmm.
it acts as a prebiotic, and it helps with the gut, but it also reduces cortisol. So when people's morning cortisol is high, the acidic acid also, or the apple cider vinegar, reduces blood sugar response and makes you a little bit more insulin sensitive. And then packing the body with the magnesium and the taurine, and that tends to curb people's appetite.
You and I were talking a little bit about coffee before we signed on. You drink coffee. What
I
about coffee
do, yeah.
in a diet?
I think the research on coffee is magnificent. Yeah, you're talking about an organic, fresh ground coffee, and it has some wonderful plant phenols to it, and we know that it's an antioxidant, and the caffeine acts as a really great delivery system
Mhm.
for for the tissues, right? So if you're when we're talking about keto and we're doing some sort of keto coffee with some fats and MCT and the caffeines, we know that that helps drive the fats to the brain a little bit more efficiently. I usually have my first cup of coffee around 10 or 11 o'clock,
Hmm.
uh, where I have that apple cider vinegar drink first.
Okay. So how much apple cider vinegar do you put into that hot drink?
2 tablespoons
Okay.
max, in a you know 10-ounce mug kind of a thing, and that that really seems to set the body in motion. And then uh, I'll drink the coffee more as an appetite suppressant. So if I'm intermittent fasting, I really don't feel like I need to eat till about 1 or 1:30. And if I get my exercise in the morning or just before lunch, then I'm also able to reduce that glycogen load even further and break into some of the fat storage.
Well, you really walk the talk, don't you?
I hope so.
Yeah, you're doing it as much as you are with your patients, which is fantastic. It's always good to have that congruency.
I think it's important to at least have a little empathy, and I got to know what they're going through, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we just have a couple of minutes, and so I'm wondering if anybody has any questions, if you want to type in anything, chat anything to us in our final minutes here of asking any questions of Dr. Bergman. But I'm also intrigued with intermittent fasting. I do think maybe you can close by just talking about some of the research from the Global Fasting Summit, and maybe for some different people who it might be indicated for, depending on what their practitioner says.
One of the things that was universal amongst throughout the weekend was this sense of autophagy, which is the body uh, breaking down debris intracellularly and even extracellularly, and even breaking it down as for a source of energy, but breaking down old, tired cells and
Yes.
how they're looking at that. It's like raking the leaves off of the grass. It allows the grass to still get more sunlight. The grass grows a little greener. So by allowing that cellular debris to be excreted and dumped, it improves um, growth hormones. It improves insulin sensitivity. So they're showing that you get this boost of adrenaline, you get this boost of muscle growth, um, clarity. They're looking at that even for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and how it's reducing the glycation in the brain, and they're looking at it for cancer therapies now, and the studies are ongoing, so they weren't making hard conclusive statements, but everything that they're studying in the oncology field, in the neurodegenerative field, is very, very promising. And everyone went back to the historical aspects where every culture and every religion uh,
Yep.
has had some reason or some excuse to have a period of fasting and a period of feasting. And
Mm-hmm.
especially in those blue zone areas where people have lived for so long, that they're seeing that as a correlation. Eating too much isn't great. Starving too much isn't great. Exercising too much isn't great. Sitting around too much isn't great. So, from all of these incredibly smart people doing this research from Harvard and MIT and USC, um, they were all right. Every single one of them were all right. And now, as practitioners, I think it's our job to link all of those right and correct statements and use them together, rather than just being dogmatic and saying this is the only diet that works or that's the only diet that works. Everyone's different, and everyone's circumstances are different, and um, we need to be as clinically flexible as possible.
Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. It's so nice to connect with you after some years and to see what you're up to. And again, as always, great work.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.